Third Wave 25, the podcast. Hi, everyone. My name is Reagan, and we are all here at Third Wave in Lake Placid, Florida. We are here with everybody from all over the world, and we've had the privilege of meeting so many people, and I have a few of them here with me today, so I'm going to let them introduce themselves and tell you where they're from. So, Joe, why don't you start?
I am Joe Witoski. I am a youth and young adult pastor in New Albany, Ohio. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, and I have been in my current role for about 2.5 years.
Hi, my name is Eman, and I live in Israel in Kfar Yasif, a small village near Nazareth, and I'm a youth leader in my local church. I'm glad to be here.
That's amazing. We're glad you're here.
Hi, I'm Sumayah Idu. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. I am a youth leader in my district and in my local church, and I'm also really happy to be here.
Great. Well, I'm excited to hear what you all have for us today. One of the things that we've had the privilege of having here is we've heard so many stories from so many NYI leaders and people from all over the globe, and they've said stories about their leadership journeys and told us in a session about who their mentors are and how they formed them into who they are now. And so I'm just going to ask each of you to share off of one of those, just kind of about your leadership journey or your mentoring experience. So, Joe, I'm going to start with you. So tell us a little bit about your leadership journey and how you came to be the leader that you are today.
Okay. Well, I grew up in church. I was born into a family that was already following Jesus, and that was great. I went to a small Christian school in Columbus, Ohio, and was in church pretty much every Sunday. But I got to the point where my faith was mostly just there because my parents said it needed to be, and all of my teachers at school said that it needed to be. That was the right thing to do. And so I wasn't really interested. I was there because I had to be, and I couldn't drive. And so wherever my parents went, I went. And so that just happened to be at church. But when I was 16 years old, I ended up at church camp because my brother was going. And I didn't really want to be there, but as often happens in church camp in the U.S., on the first night, I gave my life to Jesus and said, I realized that my life is a life of sin, and I need forgiveness. We followed that up on the next night of camp with me getting my call to ministry, which was a whirlwind of a week for me. And so I was kind of upset about that call to ministry. I had other plans for my life, and I was like, man, I want to give you parts of my life, like my heart and stuff, but I still want to do things my own way. I was a little upset. I was scared because giving your life to something like being a pastor is a scary and intimidating thing, and I didn't think that I could do it. But I said, okay, I'll do it. But after I gave my life to Jesus at that church camp, I kind of thought that was it. Last night in our session, Dr. Sam Barber was talking about the fact that we often confuse the starting line with the finish line. And by that, he meant salvation is not the finish line for our lives as believers. That's the starting line. And there is so much more to go. But I was the victim of that. I confused the start line with the finish line. And so I was still living my life my own way, trying to do things the way that I wanted to do them. But eventually I found myself at Mount Vernon Nazarene University in Mount Vernon, Ohio. I went in as a youth and family ministry major because I said, yes, God, I'm gonna follow you in that. But I was still trying to do things my own way. I was still making some really, really poor decisions up until one point. There was a very significant leader in my life. Her name is Pastor Stephanie Lobdell, and she recognized some things that I was doing, and she had a really, really hard conversation with me where she called me out on some of those things. She said, "This is not okay." And one thing that I will never forget that she said to me, she said, "I'm having this conversation with you for two reasons." I'm sitting there just weeping because she just called me out on all of the bad things in my life. Right. She said, "I'm having this conversation with you for two reasons. The first is because I love you. And I
Wow.
really, truly believe that you can be an amazing pastor. So she led with that. And then she said, the second reason is because you need to understand that you cannot lead anybody where you are not going yourself.
Yeah, that's good.
And so if I am ever going to lead somebody to Jesus, I need to be walking toward Jesus, hand in hand with Jesus, if that is ever going to happen. So that was really significant for me. At that point, the game kind of changed for me. And I realized I needed to start taking my own personal spiritual formation more seriously, because I wanted to be faithful to God. And she made it very clear that I needed to make some changes in my life. And by the power of the Holy Spirit, He has set me free from several things, and has really changed me from the inside out. He's still doing it. Because we're never to the point where we stop growing. So I'm thankful for her leadership in that way, to lead in love and have uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. That's great. I have a question, just taking it back a little bit to that moment when you said you had two big nights in your life, like really committing to Jesus and then getting your call to ministry the next day. What changed for you in that time? You said that you were almost angry about that call because it was inconvenient in a way for the plans that you had. At what point did you start to feel like I'm ready to accept this? Like this is where God's leading me, and I'm going to tell people about it.
Yeah. I began to think about my future. I had plans for my future. Like I said, I really wanted to be a pilot. I thought that would just be super cool to travel around the world and to meet all these people and to do that and make a lot of money. But as I sat with this idea, this concept that I was called to ministry, really what began to happen was I was unable to picture myself in any other role.
Yeah.
I couldn't see myself as a pilot. That concept was cool to me, but I couldn't see myself doing it. And so I would say it was probably about 2 years of sitting with that and thinking over and over again, what is my future going to look like? And it just came back to ministry. So
yeah, that's awesome. I see a lot of myself in that call. I think sometimes people think of like the Damascus Road moment with Paul, and they think that's how all calls are received. But a lot of times it's just continual faithful steps and God continuing to show up and remind us again and again, and placing people in our lives like Stephanie Lobdell for you to remind us and point us back to where He's leading us. So in that vein, then, you now as a pastor, how have you like taken those experiences and taken those words that Stephanie said for you, even now a few years ago, into like really making sure you're leading yourself so that you can continue to lead your teens and your young adults as well? Yeah.
It comes back to that concept, that line of you can't lead anybody where you're not going yourself.
Yeah.
And I have begun to develop sort of this contemplative spirit within myself. I'm currently a student at NTS, Nazarene Theological Seminary, and we in a class I took this fall, we read a book by Eugene Peterson. It's actually a collection of Eugene Peterson's letters to his son, and in that he talks about how he never really fit with any of the other pastors that he was around.
Right.
He saw his role as to put himself before the Lord in silence and in solitude, to be filled up to go out and do the work of a minister. And so for me, it's coming back to that a lot, to really focus on sitting in silence to begin my day, to allow God to speak to me or to not. And just to simply sit there with Him and enjoy His presence, so that as I am filled up, I can go and pour myself out. So really, I'm just trying to look more like Jesus each and every day. And I'm hoping that as I follow Him, I will be able to invite others along on the journey, just as the Apostle Paul says, to follow me as I follow Christ. That's really what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's the key to discipleship, right? Like you're following and then you're inviting people to follow along with you.
Yep.
We've learned a lot about that today from Dr. Sam Barber, which was great. Well, thank you so much, Joe, for sharing.
Yeah,
That was
absolutely.
awesome. All right, Eman, you have a little bit to share with us as well about your leadership journey too. So why don't you tell us a little more about that?
Yes, actually, the journey was hard.
Yeah.
And it's still ongoing. Yes, becoming a youth leader is not easy. It requires a lot of shaping from the Lord in our lives. I think the key of being Christ-like and being shaped is the quiet time with the Lord, having a quiet time with Him, getting to know Him better, and reading the Word is really important. It helped me to be who I am today.
Yeah.
It shaped me for who I am today, and allowing the Holy Spirit also to work in us is a very important thing that has to be in our lives. Hearing from the Lord and being obedient also.
Yeah.
Being obedient when we don't know if this thing is really right in our human minds.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe sometimes we don't understand that fully or at all,
Yeah.
but we have to let the Lord in. And sometimes He will tell us afterwards. Sometimes He won't.
Yeah.
We don't know that for sure, but we have to be obedient in order to go to the next season, to the next step. So,
Yeah.
yes, being shaped is really it does hurt,
Yeah.
but it does give you a new you with the Lord. So, yes.
Yeah, that's great. One of the things I think about a lot with obedience is sometimes, like you were saying, in our human mind, we think, well, I don't want to have to be obedient. Surely there's a better way, or this seems like it's going to be hard or painful. And one of the things that I always go back to is that obedience is a response to God's faithfulness. And God was faithful before we were around. As we read through Scripture, He's been faithful here in our lives, and He promises to be faithful again. And we know that He will be because He has been in the past. And so as we acknowledge His faithfulness, it's easier to be obedient because we know the God that we're serving. So I'm curious for you, what ways in your leadership journey have you seen God's faithfulness in your life?
Oh, that was a lot of times and at once. But I can see Him in my relationships with my friends. I can see Him with my relationship with Him.
Yeah.
And growing with myself with Him, and also in my daily life. In the university also with my homework. Before I came here, I had a big homework that I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
In order for me to come here and be free,
Yeah.
I had to do it and submit it before that. So I was really scared. I was really stressed, and I was telling the Lord, Jesus, please help me.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to do all of that.
Yeah.
And we had our ticket back to Israel canceled.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of things happened, in the last 2 days or 3 days that I thought I'll be resting to come
wow.
here.
Yeah.
But I experienced the Lord in a really great way.
Yeah.
And He always continues to surprise us in really in various ways.
Yeah.
So it was a big blessing to come here, and He was really there. He told me that I'm with you, don't be scared.
Yeah.
And I really felt that. I felt His peace within.
Yeah.
And I finished my homework. I finished everything that I had to do.
Good. Yeah.
In order to come here.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's great. So then in what ways now you as a youth leader leading people that maybe are a little bit behind you on the journey, how are you trying to shape them and help them to learn how to be obedient?
I think that being obedient myself to God helps me also encourage other youth to be also obedient and follow the Lord. And that starts with me. And I did experience a lot of it was a big step for me a few months ago. that I had to take in order to be like obedient to the Lord, and
Yeah.
I didn't really understand it, and it was really hurtful, and it shaped me a lot actually.
Yeah.
I think I understand now why it was, and I had to do it, but
Yeah.
so I thought about it when I had to do it, when I had to be obedient. I thought about it this way: if I can't be obedient to the Lord, how can I tell other people to
Yeah,
be obedient
definitely.
and share the gospel with them and tell them like, oh, you should be listening to the voice of the Lord and be obedient and continue in His way.
Yeah.
So it was challenging, definitely, but this kept reminding me that I should be obedient and then continue like sharing this with the people I lead.
Yeah.
So that's also a blessing.
Yeah.
And encouraging, so you can like the people who you lead can also encourage you to
Yeah.
be who you are now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great.
That's
awesome.
really cool. If I just that concept that
Yeah.
you mentioned of like most of what you communicate as a leader, I've heard it said most of what you communicate is caught rather than taught.
Right.
Exactly.
Meaning that like you communicate more to the people that you are leading by the things that you do
Absolutely.
and the way that you live rather than
Yeah.
by what you say. And so
Definitely.
that's huge to model obedience. I think is so effective rather than just saying from a high place of like, yes, you need to be obedient to Jesus, rather than saying that, just demonstrating it.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Definitely.
Right.
Definitely. I agree.
Yeah, I think when Jesus lived life with people, like it was the greatest example for us, because we still read those stories and we still see like how him living life with those people impacted them even after he was not on the physical earth anymore. And so that obedience will have an impact even beyond what we see, you know, once we plant those seeds, and those people may move on in life and we may never see them again, but it's an amazing part about the God that we serve is that he can use so many things
Yeah.
in that way.
Yeah. And
That's
it
great.
takes you for like to a whole new level, a deeper level with
Right.
God. Yeah.
Yeah, a different level of commitment. That's great. Well, thank you, Eman.
Thank you.
So, Sumayah,
Yeah.
we also had a session where we talked a little bit about mentoring and different people that have helped form us into who we are now. So I would love to hear a little bit more about just some mentors you've had in your life.
Okay, the persons I would consider as my mentors are actually both of my parents. Thanks to them, I'm blessed to be a part of the Nazarene community, and I'm fortunate to be here, in Third Wave.
Yeah.
We've actually been through a lot as a family. You know, they have survived many different illnesses,
Yeah.
and through that is how I realized that God is definitely real, and I would be a fool to not give my life to God, you know?
Yeah.
So thanks to them, I would always be heavily involved in the church. They keep me focused, they hold me accountable, and they have really pushed me, guided me, and molded me into being the best version of me I can be. Because they are really influential leaders in our church. They actually planted the church. They founded
Wow.
the church in our sense. So it's kind of like I have a legacy to live up to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thanks to them, I'm a part of the NY. I'm a leader in the NY, and I don't have to do it alone. I can go
Yeah.
to them for help. There are other people that I can go to help for, but they are, my main mentors because, like my mom specifically, she used to be NY president, district NY leader.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's really easy for me to just look at her life and be able to impact others the way I have been impacted because, we were called to serve and we were called to spread the word and, get more people in our youth groups.
Yeah.
And it's also really important to get people to know God at the young age.
Right.
So I'm 18, I'm younger than you guys. So for me, if I were to just recently be hearing about Jesus, I probably would not follow.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to start to know God, know your word, start to pray, do everything that you can to be closer to him so
Right.
that you don't have to live your life alone.
Yeah.
you know?
That's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they have been super influential leaders in your life,
Yeah.
and taught you from a really young age, like
Very young.
the foundation of your faith, and has brought you to this moment. So as you think about then kind of returning that mentorship for someone else, what do you think you would take from your parents that you would like to pass along to maybe some teens or just young people that you would be mentoring?
As a teenager, there are moments that you feel, you shouldn't be doing this. You have a life to live. You have other things to do.
Yeah.
And church is boring and whatnot. That's what everyone says.
Yeah.
So, like my parents, I would focus on the fact that that feeling is temporary. Being a teenager is temporary.
Yeah.
You should not hold on to the things of this world. You should focus on God. So if I am, let's say I was around some teenagers right now, I would tell them to try to ignore those urges, ignore those feelings, and focus on God. It would help them in the long run. It's definitely worth it because, still talking about my parents, I have examples that I can go back to.
Yeah.
Because they have been in the church since they were born. They went to the same church, and they've been in the youth group and everything together. And I've seen I've seen in their lives what it's like to grow up in God.
Yeah.
I've seen it in my life, what it's like to grow up with God.
Right.
And I would definitely want every teenager to experience His grace.
Yeah. That's really impactful.
Yeah.
That's great. In this quick turnaround for you, since you are 18, is there anybody that you can think of in your current context that you maybe are directly mentoring, or maybe that you even going home from Third Wave would want to bring some of this back from, and what would you want to tell them from Third Wave, maybe specifically?
So I won't lie, it was never my intention to be a mentor. I never wanted to be anyone's role model because, people look at you, and if I should fall short, they will remember that, and I don't like that. But coming to Third Wave has shown me that it's okay to fail. Failing doesn't make you a failure.
Yeah,
I learned that from my friend Joe. And what I would tell them, that's what you asked?
Yeah.
I would tell them to hold the faith, to keep working hard at doing what you're doing. And, we can't do this alone. So even if you are called to be a small role, like a secretary in the NYI, to just take minutes and write down what we learned, it's really small, it's really easy. You have to start from somewhere. And you never have to do it alone. Yeah. If you are a leader outside of the church, somebody might abandon you, but it's a family.
Yeah.
So once we ask you to do something, we will help you. You never have to do it alone.
Yeah.
So I would make sure, when I go back home, I would make sure to apply everything I learned here and pass on that knowledge to everyone so that we can all feel safe. We can all feel motivated to be a leader because I didn't want to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I know there are people that feel the same way that I used to feel. Right. So just like I was given this opportunity to change, everyone deserves that opportunity to change as well.
Yeah, that's really good. I think that one of the blessings of this experience has been getting to physically see the community that we're a part of.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get tunnel vision and get locked into what you're used to, or just think, maybe I'm at a small church, or I don't know a lot of people around me that are trying to live the same way that I am. But getting to see people from literally the entire world, not just your country or your town or whatever, but the entire world that are all doing this together, it really motivates you to want to be a leader and to rest in the fact that nobody's expecting you to do it perfectly, and that, like you were saying, Eman, with the obedience piece and just trying to continue to be faithful in what you're doing, that God's will inevitably happen, because it's really not on our backs anyway. Yeah. It's not about our effort. It's about our faithfulness and our obedience. True. So that's great.
That's the best part about this experience. I've heard so many different stories, so many different circumstances, and it got me thinking that there's an entire world outside of my country.
Yeah.
There are many different experiences outside of my country. I'm definitely not alone. If I feel alone in my church, I have people all over the world.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. one of the impactful things that we've done here is we've had moments where we've sang different songs in all of our native languages.
Yeah.
And that's something that I hope that we can all contribute to our teens, is just helping them to, even though they can't physically see it, know that there's people all around the world that are singing the same song and have the same passion in their heart, and worshiping the one same true God. So that's awesome. Well, thank you all for sharing a little bit about yourselves and your journeys. So thankful to have met all of you and to be able to see the way that you're impacting your areas all over the world. So for anybody who maybe has stories about their leadership journey or mentors, if you'd love to share that, we'd love it if you would share this podcast, and maybe just post it on your Instagram or your social media and tell us a little bit more about what your experience has been, and even comments or questions about things that we said too.